So, throughout the month of February, we've hit kind of a dry spell for games, and as someone who loves games, and gaming in general, I thought now might be the perfect time to go back and revisit some great games from this console's generation. One of these games being Tomb Raider 2013. And yes, I know, whilst it wasn't originally released on the PS4 and Xbox One, it is part of the new Tomb Raider series called the Survivor series. This game gave us a brave reimagining of the character of Lara Croft, showing us an inexperienced young scared girl who needed to learn how to survive in the most extreme of ways, giving us the perfect origin story while staying true to a character many of us all know and love. The original Tomb Raider was released all the way back in 1996 for the Sega Saturn, MS-DOS and Sony PlayStation. This game was met with massive commercial success and critical acclaim, being one of the first action-adventure games that has paved the way for the genre in the last 20 years. Without it, games like Uncharted, Horizon Zero Dawn, and even the Far Cry series may not exist today. This game was a prototype of the 3D action-adventure game, pushing their technology at the time to its limits. Sure, the game may look terrible and it probably feels janky and hard to control like most games at the time. However, without it, the action-adventure genre would not be the same, and many great games to come after wouldn't exist today. Let's get on to talking about Tomb Raider 2013. It was something completely unexpected at the time from the developers at Crystal Dynamics. This game was darker, scarier, grittier, and so much more brutal than any other game in the series, and was following that darker direction that games at the time were starting to take, like The Last of Us. Tomb Raider was one of the first games in Australia to be given the R18+ rating, simply just for how brutal and raw the game really was. However, with this change of direction and tone also came a change of direction within the storytelling, the world, the gameplay itself, specifically the combat. Lara Croft in this iteration is a 21-year-old girl fresh out of university looking to complete her father's work and take on her own expeditions. Lara has never actually been shown to the player this young and this vulnerable before. This showcased greatly just how inexperienced and weak she is at the beginning of the game. The developers at Crystal Dynamics managed to capture Lara's feelings of dread and fear, and somehow managed to create these feelings within the player themselves. The beginning of this game is not an action-adventure game. I'd almost argue it's a horror game, when the first sequence of events at the beginning result in us being strung up from the ceiling and left to die and rot with all the other decaying bodies around you, combined with the game's amazing soundtrack by Lucio Nanni, created this sense of fear and horror, so much like what Lara was experienced at the time. Progressing through that cave at the beginning of the game is unlike anything else we feel or see in the rest of the game. We feel helpless, we feel scared. It feels as if at any moment in time, the man who trapped us in that cave could come out of nowhere and he could kill us at any point in time. Not only does this first section of the game feel totally different from anything else, it also sets a tone for the rest of the game and shows Lara at her weakest and how she can only grow and get stronger from here on out, much like the player themselves. Now, let's talk about Lara's very first kill, a massive, significant point in this game, and the developers did an amazing job with it. When we first kill, not only is it a scrap where Lara has no choice but to kill or be killed, the man we kill also tries to rape Lara earlier. This game touches upon some very, very delicate areas and isn't afraid to go there. The developers showcase and really emphasize the first kill of the game. From here on out, we slowly start to see the change from horror and thriller to an action adventure. See, as Lara grows and develops her confidence and skills, we also feel more confident and stronger as the player. Another perfect example of this is when we are tasked to go through the military bunker and send out a distress call all alone, and finally having to be pushed to our limits by climbing the massive 70-year-old rusted tower in the extreme weather. The very idea, when presented to Lara, almost brings her to tears, and to the player it's presented to us as being very daunting and challenging. And when we finally do make it to the bunker, those very first steps you take through the bunker are nerve-wracking, especially when combined with the ominous music that plays and the countless enemies who seem so fearless and ruthless only enhance that feeling of loneliness and inexperience, making us once again feel like anything could kill us at any point in time, much like Lara would at the time. However, after this point, we no longer get that same feeling. Lara proves that she is more than just some rich 21-year-old girl looking for adventure. She shows she is a survivor, and at this point is no longer that girl we see at the beginning of that cave, and is finally on her way to becoming that hardened adventurer we all know today. Now, I don't want to focus too much on the world and gameplay, because as the title suggests, it's about Lara and her character development. but I feel it is almost integral to talk about these elements, because they are important to the character development and enhances that feeling of growth and experience, especially for the player, rather than Lara herself. Not only has the character and tone of Lara changed, but the gameplay and world has gone through some serious reworks as well. Instead of being completely linear, the game brings in some freedom and places us in an open world for the first time in the series, with each area feeling like a somewhat linear level from the original games, but adding in new elements and adding in genre expectations we see from games today in order to help bring this game into a more modern and robust world. The move to make the world less linear and instead create an open world helps bring in more freedom for the player and encourages them to explore and see what the world has to offer, whilst also keeping them on track and feel like there's only one direction: forward. Along with this new change to the working of the world, the combat was significantly changed as well, and instead of being equipped with their trademark dual pistols, Lara is given an assortment of weapons with the new addition of a bow, which has been front and center for this new chapter of the franchise, most likely to emphasize that survivor feeling and direction in this game. With salvage, a collectible resource, Lara can upgrade her weapons and craft attachments like silencers, padded stocks, extended mags, scopes, etc. Furthermore, we also gain XP, which is used to upgrade Lara's skills in combat, survival, and traversal. This new weapon and skill system complements the character development of Lara really well, and shows that with more confidence and practice, she becomes a hardened survivor who is a force to be reckoned with. The developers also showcased Lara specifically seeming to struggle with hand-to-hand combat, which makes sense. She is going to struggle physically because biologically, she is weaker than her male enemies. This is where stealth is encouraged, especially in earlier sections of the game, to help show that not only is she weaker and inexperienced, but to also showcase the intelligence of Lara, and how instead of fighting with brute force, she fights with her brain. Of course, you can try and take down waves of enemies with a simple bow, but it is so much harder and not necessarily encouraged given the circumstances we are placed in. However, with the addition of a progression system and significant story events, Lara by the end of the game no longer needs to rely on stealth and can take down her enemies with ease. This is shown to great length in the last 30 minutes or so of the game. We have to take down the Sun Queen's Storm Guard and numerous human enemies as well, with no chance for stealth really presented to the player. When we are put into these tightly knit areas where the enemies could come out of nowhere, with each different area not really feeling the same in terms of tone, due to us, the player, growing and experiencing that same journey that Lara has gone through. Slowly with each event that happens throughout the game, it becomes less like a horror thriller game and becomes more like an action adventure game, whilst maintaining that grit and darkness of a horror thriller game that's been introduced into this iconic game series. The game was unlike anything else seen before. However, it fits the tone we expect from modern games today, and strays from the cartoon movie-like action of the original game whilst maintaining what made the series so great, without ever making us feel like we're playing and experiencing anything else but a Tomb Raider game. Thank you for watching. I've been Seth from Silver Soul Gaming. You can check out all our links in the description. We have a website, a Twitch, a Twitter, a Facebook, a Patreon, all that good shit. My Twitter and Twitch are in the description. Make sure you guys subscribe, like the video, and I'll see you guys next week for another video.